and then a vote.
Okay, Councillor Rice, if you want to start the debate.
I can leave it to the council questions and points I was going to make, because I can read the room quite quick.
Thank you. So can I now move to the vote? Yes? So we're voting on the substantive motion. Can I have a show of hands in support of it, please? Those against? Any abstentions? Okay, it's been carried. Okay, thank you. We now move on to item 12, which is the Housing Revenue Account and Capital Budget Programme. And I'd like to call on Mr. Ben Smith, please.
This one is straightforward for me. The report is in front of you. It is a very large capital programme. I think it is self-evident what is in, what is not in. I have no technical advice to give on this one at this stage, presiding member.
Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, presiding member. I will try and be as brief as I can, but there are a few things that I would like to highlight because it's actually quite a momentous report in some respects, because there are many things in here that we've never done as a council before. So I'll draw members' attention to paragraph 2.5, where for the first time ever, not only are we purchasing 106 through 106 agreements in Garden Village, some 141 homes by the planning permission that was granted. 50% of those will be council homes and 50% of those will be low-cost home ownership, which is the first time this council has ever done that. So I do believe that's something to be really proud of, and those will be targeted at first-time buyers, and there are strict restrictions in terms of who can access those, and so somebody will end up paying 70% of the value, 30% of the value is held as a bond, so that those homes can be held in perpetuity as low-cost home ownership homes. So if they're sold, they will be sold again on that premise. So really pleased to see that here in the report. Also very pleased to see for the first time package deals. We're exploring this, and I look forward to bringing more detail on that forwards to future meetings, and really pleased as well to see the continuation of investment in acquisitions, where we really target and focus on buying back ex-council right to buy properties, which I think is absolutely right and proper. And the running total at the moment, presiding member, is 13,804 council homes that this council has, and we look forward to expanding that again in the future. So as the leader highlighted in his presentation, over the next 4 years, we will be investing £219 million, which is a significant sum and the most that we've ever invested, and also £57.3 million over the next 4 years in terms of more homes. So you will see the detail there in Appendix A. That is a total investment of £272 million, 416,000. So it's a significant sum of money, and I'm really pleased to bring it here. But I will note and highlight, as members may have noticed, there has been a bit of slippage and a bit of movement in the programme. And as Mr. Smith said, when we introduced the revenue programme, if the risks that are attached to HRA are removed, then we can always return to this capital programme and revise it and bring back things back into that programme. So this is the current state of affairs, but if more money does be freed from the reserves, we'll of course revise this programme as we go accordingly. So happy to take any questions on the report, and happy to move.
Did you second it, please?
Yeah, formally second, Chair.
And so I'm going to move to the amendment first, okay? So, and then we'll come back to that. Right. Are you moving it? Are you speaking on the amendment? Oh, it's over here. Sorry, I thought it was you. Sorry, sorry, Councillor Black.
Thank you, Chair. The amendment has been circulated, but for clarity, it refers on page 6 of Appendix A, the 8th item down, which is the environmental improvement budget, which is £700,000 this year, but is proposed to be just £70,000 next year, to be funded by borrowing the additional £630,000 from and use the revenue cost of £38,115 to come from HRA reserves this year and to be absorbed into borrowing costs in future budgets. Now, this is not a huge amount of money in relation to the total budget which we have in front of us for the HRA capital budget. It is, however, a very important budget, and I'll just read from the letter which we had back from the leader after scrutiny, just for members' information, that this budget is used to address areas belonging to the housing revenue account which are outside the curtilage of an individual's homes, such as landscaping and localised parking and footpaths, which serve HRA properties and are not part of the adopted highway. And the leader points out that we've invested over the last 5 years £6.8 million through this way in this budget. And I very much support the way this money is being spent because it's very important. And the Cabinet member will know that, of course, the Welsh Housing Quality Standard does include the environmental area around the house as well as the quality of the house itself. Now, although we spent £6.8 million, I'm aware that there's a lot more that still needs to be done on the council estates around Swansea in terms of spending this money. And this money it will not just be about making the area look better, but it's important that people do have a very good environment in which they're living in. It can also make it look safer. So there's an example in my own ward, for example, in Brondeg Crescent, opposite Councillor Cyril Anderson, as it happens, where there's a square there which is in need of resurfacing, and there's a lady living there in a wheelchair who's struggling to get over that square every day because it is so uneven, and of course it is possibly dangerous to other people. So I think it's important that money is made available for that particular scheme, and I'm sure members in other wards will have similar examples of where this money can be spent to improve on the council estates in the area, to improve them. So I'm asking is that this budget is reinstated to the amount it was this year, so that we can continue that programme. And I'm pointing out that the amount of money which is going to cost from the HRA, I understand the issues around the reserves. It's not a huge amount of money, but of course, as the Cabinet member has pointed out already, there's always slippage every year. So the chances of us actually taking that money out of reserves is very slim indeed. And I should think it'd be fairly easily accommodated within the overall budget. So I'd be grateful if the Cabinet member would consider allowing this amendment to go through so that we can carry on with the schemes which are taking place on council estates all around Swansea. Thank you, Chair.
And the first, I'll come back to you then. Second. There it is.
Yeah, thank you, presiding member. So at this point in time, I'm afraid I can't support the amendment, but I will explain why, and I will hopefully give some reassurances in my explanation as well. So it was remiss of me really not to also reference the significant amount of capital investment that we will have in the flats, the high-rise blocks at the top of High Street. So there's a significant amount of investment going into Croft Street and Griffith John Street, which is very costly and should be a priority. And also there are residents in Heel, Emrys and Tudnall Place in Penderry Ward who've been waiting an incredible amount of time to have their properties brought up to a much better standard, which is again very costly, and they've been waiting patiently. So those schemes have been prioritised. But in terms of the environmental works and garden improvements, I will give assurances that the money that is there, even though it's been reduced, I've questioned our officers in terms of this and had reassurances that whenever we're talking about safety of environmental works and garden improvement works, that will be addressed. And anything that's prioritised in that respect will come out of the spend, or we will find money to address that, because it's not just about doing works which are perhaps I could describe as non-essential at this point. So we do need to prioritise where our spend is. It may seem like a small amount of money, but at the moment, every pound is precious in the HRA and where we invest it. If money, as I said, if money does become available and if risks do disappear and we can draw from reserves, of course, as I've promised and committed to, we will revise that capital programme and consider reintroducing that money at that point. But I'm afraid I can't support it this evening, but we will consider it and keep that on our shortlist, if you like, when circumstances change with the reserves.
Did you want to come in?
Yeah, echo what Councillor Lewis has said, and I think the amendment as written as well is a bit inconsistent for the Lib Dems in terms of their approach on borrowing otherwise. because on this occasion, they are suggesting that not only do we go against the 151 officer's technical advice in terms of risk, but they're then suggesting we also seek further borrowing in order to do it. And again, Mr. Smith has been very clear that he doesn't intend borrowing for a number of years yet until rates are down. So for two reasons, we don't disregard technical advice unless there are very good reasons to do so, and I don't think they exist. Secondly, you've advised us that you think we shouldn't be borrowing on numerous occasions, and now you feel it's appropriate. But as Councillor Lewis said, it's academic anyway, because as soon as those risks diminish, our intention is to put these back in the programme as quickly as possible. So our intention is to do this, but to do it when we get the technical advice from Mr. Smith in order to do so. For all of those reasons, it's a timing issue more than anything here. We're supportive of the aims, but it's about making sure we follow appropriate technical advice and do not disregard that without due course. The other thing I just wanted to test here, I've recently been reading the Liberal Democrats literature that's been pushed around Penllygare. And that makes a very, very blunt statement. It says the Liberal Democrats are clear that what Penllygare needs now is more jobs, not yet more houses. So is that the position of the Liberal Democrats now, that you don't want more homes? Because it's important, because you're going to vote on a more homes policy that will deliver more homes here. And if that is now your group's position, I think that needs clarifying, because either it's just political fodder and don't really mean it, or it's actually a policy position, in which case it might give you difficulties in how you vote on this report.
I think the leader's being a little bit shy, honest. Lyle, hang on a minute now. That's pushing the boat out a bit. Now, let's be blunt about this, right? That was about the 3M site, where the loss of 700 jobs. I know it may not bother you too much about that. The loss of 700 jobs. And you confirmed on one of these websites or Facebook pages that it's going to be housing. Yes, you did. You said, do you want houses instead of jobs? That was on the Facebook page. And what we are saying, we said in Penllygare and we'll say anywhere else, we need jobs in this city. We need good quality jobs, because as a result of that, we would raise the financial buying power of the people in this city. But no, we are becoming a dormitory city. If you look at the number of houses that were in the LDP, but they haven't all been built, admittedly, you look at those houses, there was 11,000 houses in the LDP. And I think something like 3,000 have been built. The Welsh Government projection of houses in southwest Wales was 6,500. You can tell I was listening to Wendy Fitzgerald, can't you? But that is the fact. And what we were saying in front of that building, that empty building that used to have 600 jobs, we need jobs in southwest Wales. We don't need any more houses in large estates like that's already being built up there. So don't come back and say, oh, you don't want houses. Of course, everybody wants houses, but we want the jobs for the people to go into those houses.
So, do you want to come back?
Sorry, Chair, I don't believe I've had an answer to the question about what their policy is. If it's just political electioneering, that's fine. That's okay.
And the policy is,
Chair, I'm on my feet here, I haven't given way.
jobs.
Chair, I'm on my feet and I haven't given way. I think it's an important point here, because if there's a policy position that the group has adopted about homes, that is something they need to clarify. If it isn't their policy position, then it undermines what they've said in the leaflet. On the point about jobs, though, it isn't a trade-off. I mean, if you have to be consistent here, a number of things in the capital programme which you fail to support are ones for job creation. So, you know, I don't think you can have it both ways. I was just asking the question, is what you put in your leaflet what your policy position is? And which it isn't your policy position, and that's fine. Okay, great clarification.
Okay, I'm moving on. Councillor Rice.
Yeah, just to make sure I'm coming at the right time. I think, have we voted on this amendment or not yet? We're debating.
The amendment at
So,
the moment.
I'm not, my point's not about the amendment. It's about the general policy.
going to go with, yeah. Oh. Mr. Smith, have you given technical advice on this amendment? I believe you have, yes? No? No, he hasn't. Okay.
I hadn't.
Okay, sorry. Okay, if you can give
Um,
us some advice then, please.
I have allowed it. It is an unusual one, and I recognise the points made by the leader in terms of the nominal borrowing for a year. I would advise that the opposition did equally follow my advice as to why they couldn't touch it from reserves as a whole for the same technical reason I advised the administration. So I was satisfied that the opposition had modified it to be modest in its effect, but the leader's position is quite right that the only reason that there has had to have been a throttling back on the overall capital programme for the HRA was because of the advice I've given, which required reserves to be bolstered, and is very much a timing issue. So I think, as the leader has acknowledged, it is very much something that the sentiment was supported, but it was the mechanism and the timing that was the issue. So I'm satisfied the amendment stands, but I do recognise both why the opposition had framed it the way they had done it. They'd done it skillfully because there was a limitation on the use of HRA reserves, but I equally recognise the comments that the leader has made around unusual to see additional borrowing. It would, of course, be nominally borrowed. I wouldn't actually go and externally borrow it because I can do exactly the same on the HRA as I can on the general fund. But that's the summation of my technical advice. The amendment stands, but I recognise the points made by both the opposition and the leader.
Mr. Smith, okay, it's been proposed and seconded, so we're going to move to the vote. So all in favour of the amendment, please. Those against? Any abstentions? Okay, that has fallen. So we move back to the substantive notice. We can now debate that. Yes? So Councillor Rice.
Thank you. It's a quick point, really. I think much of what you've put in here is really good, and it's good to see the investment going in. However, my concern is the balance between new builds and the cost of those comparing to the quick hits that acquisitions would give you. I know I mentioned it last year, but I do still believe that if we want to get people out of homelessness and moving quickly into homes, we need to put much more resources into acquisitions because the turnaround time is so much quicker than a build programme. And the average cost of an acquisition is about half the cost of one of the build programme houses.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Rice, for the question. Observation question, I'm not sure if it was a question in there. But yes, so I am having conversations with Welsh Government about freeing up more money to do more acquisitions. I completely agree, it's quicker, easier to turn around. But actually, I think we should do it all. Because at this moment, we've got a national housing crisis in Wales, and we can't afford to just do one thing and not do the other. We need to do it all. So if there is more money available, we'll definitely invest it in more acquisitions and buying back ex-council right to buys. Absolutely the right thing to do. And I'm asking Welsh Government, if there's more money available, please give it to us, because we do have a significant amount of ex-council house tenants who are now owner-occupiers who are approaching us and saying, I'd love to sell my council home to you. So we know the supply is there. So if the money and the funding become available, we'll definitely invest more in that.
Anybody else wishing to speak? Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. So we're going to vote on the substantive motive. So can I have a show of hands in support, please? Okay, all those against? Any abstentions? Okay, that's moved. Okay, thank you. So we now move on to item 13, which is the statutory resolution and resolutions to be made in accordance with the regulations in the setting of council tax. So can I again call on Mr. Ben Smith, please?
So nice and simple, as a result of all of the discussions and amendments and debates and votes taken so far, the revenue budget stood. Therefore, to give effect to all of the impact of that in terms of the statutory resolution, it should be, my advice is, moved as is. It needs to be moved in full, including all the gobbledygook of A minus B plus C over D divided by the square root of Z. I am sorry, it's the law, it's the way the resolution has to be framed, but my technical advice is it stands fully as is as a result of all of the discussions and votes taken in this chamber tonight. Thank you, Presiding Member.
Thank you, Mr Smith. Councillor,
Happy to move, Chair.
have a seconder, please.
Happy to second.
Any questions from anybody? Okay, it's been moved and seconded, so can I have a show of hands in support, please? All those against? Any abstentions? Okay, that's carried. Okay, we move on to item 14. And that's the Treasury Management Strategy, Investment Strategy and Minimum Revenue Provision Policy Statement for 25-26 and the Interim Year Report for 24-25, Annual Report 23-24. And again, can I call on Mr Smith? Thank you.
Thank you, Presiding Member. It's always that time at the night where you get the really complicated document. I'm not going to go through it in great detail. I will bore you to sleep, but I do not jest. It is very important, the technical stuff. So I'll just draw your attention to a couple of headline matters. Section 2.6 sets out the assumptions around the capital financing requirement. Bottom of page 181. You will see an increase in the estimated need for capital financing for the HRA. That should not surprise you. There is a borrowing need for the HRA, and you see about £50 million worth on general funds. That should not surprise you. I've given consistent advice for the last 6 years that there's about £50 million worth of capital borrowing to be deferred to be done by about 28-29. So the numbers are in there. They broadly match everything else you've had. There are some technical reasons as to why they don't exactly, but that's the reason why. I draw your attention to the table on page 182, which shows the ratio of financing costs to net revenue stream. You members should be assured that the cost to the general fund proportionately of servicing the debt goes down over time. The HRA is less clear-cut, but there is still a broadly stable and an overall slightly downward trend, indicating that your capital financing plans for the general fund and HRA are, in my professional view, affordable. If I take you over the page to the top of page 183, you see reference to the average doubt outstanding, and in recognition of questions I've already had today, it should come as no surprise to see that the probable estimate for 24-25 drops by the £20 million worth of LOBOs to date. You see a further expectation of reductions. Councillor Peter May and others were asking me about assumptions about repayments of debt. There are some short-term repayments of debt. At the moment, you see a significant increase in 26-27. That is one item I do have to give technical advice on. It might not feel entirely consistent with my advice throughout that says defer it to as long as possible. As the capital programme, which has been debated at great length, stands, if the capital programme was fully delivered to the timetable expected and fully on budget, there would be a need to theoretically externalise in 26-27. But of course, I anticipate that there will be slippage, timing issues, and so it is still broadly consistent with the need to technically look to externalise it at the end of the medium-term financial plan. I probably don't need to draw your attention to anything else. There's pages and pages and pages of it. It goes back a year, current year, future year, and it will win no prizes for being the most snappily titled report, but it is an important one. So I don't jest. If there are questions, I will endeavour to answer them, but it is at the technical end of things. But I've just drawn your attention to the important bits, which should assure you are entirely consistent with everything else you've had debated in this chamber tonight. Thank you, Presiding Member.
Thank you, Mr Smith. Any kind of a proposer first and a secretary?
Very happy to move.
Okay.
For a second.
Thank you, Councillor. Any technical questions for Mr Smith? Okay. Any questions from anybody for anything else? No? Okay, the recommendations are there. They're on page 178. There's 5 of them altogether, but I'm taking them all as one. So kind of a show of hands in support of them all, please. The vote on the Treasury Management Strategy that you... Yeah? Okay, those against? Against? Yeah. Any abstentions? Okay, that motion is carried. Okay, so we now move on to item 15, which is the capital strategy for 25-26, 29-30. And again, Mr Smith, please.
Very briefly and in normal fashion each year, these are the words that go after a whole raft of technical discussions and debates on large capital programmes. They're the words that accompany them. My technical advice is it is consistent with it, and my advice to you is that you should adopt the recommendation. But obviously, as usual, it will require a proposer and seconder. Thank you, Presiding Member. That concludes my technical advice on this item.
I have a proposal and a second.
Yeah, happy to move, Chair.
Second.
Happy to second.
Okay, any questions for anybody? Okay, we move to the recommendations then, and it's on page 237. So can I have a show of hands in support, please? All those against? Any abstentions? Okay, that's carried. Can I thank you, Mr. Smith, for your time tonight? It's been a long evening, but thank you very much for all your work and your hard work.
Yeah, Jen, if I may, in all of the stuff around the amendments and what goes where, it was remiss of me not to do my usual wholesome thanks to Mr. Smith and his team for the extraordinary amount of work that they've put in over a number of months here to get this budget together. And I think on behalf of all of us here in the chamber, thank Mr. Smith. This may well be Mr. Smith's last budget as well for Swansea Council, although we can't guarantee that quite just yet. So don't start smiling yet, Mr. Smith. But thank you very much again for the work that you and your team do, and again for everything you've done to enable us to pass the budget tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Presiding Member.
Support
I
that.
enjoy it all so much. I am planning to stay for the whole meeting. Sorry to interrupt you, Councillor Holly.
Thank you, Ben, for all your hard work. Okay, we now move on to council's questions. I remind you it's 30 minutes. If you want to be here till midnight, that's up to you. Okay, it's now 8:30, so we've got 30 minutes. So the first question is from Councillor Sam Bennett.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the Cabinet Member for the response. It's good to see what we are doing about vaping and to try and discourage children from taking up vaping. I had a question raised with me by a parent who's a member of a PTA wanting to know whether the council would look into using detectors in the schools' toilets. And there's a number of examples of schools in England that are doing that, and they wanted to know whether or not there's detectors could be installed in Swansea schools to try and discourage that being done in the toilets.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I think there are arguments in favour and against those proposals, and we're happy to look at them with an open mind.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. The next question is from Councillor Andrew Williams.
No supplementary, thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Question 3 is from Councillor Francesca O'Brien.
Thank you, Presiding Member, and thank you to the Leader for his response with the consultation. I don't know if that was prompted from our written response a few weeks ago, but we do want to ask how serious is the council on this project, because we've actually touched base with Devon Council on it, and they're not aware, or there's been no recent correspondence with them speaking to their cabinet member. So they are interested in to know what the correspondence is. And it is a bit of a missed opportunity because their council have actually doing the strategic investment transport plan at the moment, which is out for consultation in Devon. So no pun intended, we've missed the boat on that consultation over there, and that's a great shame. So a couple of questions is, one, how serious are we on this project? Because I think there's a lot of response on it and positive response too. Can you confirm when Ocean were appointed to carry out the consultation? And just over 2 years ago, the working group were apparently working on this project. And I think the reason why it was stumbling was because the coordinator was sick. So it's just wanted to see who are the stakeholders in that group, because as far as I can see, both Devon and Cornwall Council have had no correspondence since January 2022. Thank you.
No, the council is very keen that this goes ahead, but of course we don't control all of the elements to make it happen. It means the creation of the technology, the suitable vessel, keen for it to be a hydrogen vessel if at all possible, and then the infrastructure on the ports to be upgraded to allow that to happen. I think when we previously had a look at this, it was clear that a passenger ferry alone would probably not be viable. It would probably need to be a roll-on, roll-off ferry with vehicle traffic being able to use the ferries as well. There was a hiatus for a period of time in terms of discussions with authorities on the southwest of England. And I think actually at the time there was a bit of a disagreement with the then Secretary of State, I think it was Alan Cairns, who wanted to divert, as I understand it, the ferry from Swansea up towards Barry and Cardiff, which we were very unhappy with. I believe also at the time when we made the announcement of our intention to support this at the last election, I think a number of the councils on the southwest, who may not have been the same party as us, were a little annoyed that we'd made that announcement. But we continue to have constructive discussions with them. And I will get you the date, but I believe the Chief Exec may be able to give us the exact date. But Ocean have been working with us for several months, if not longer than that. And Dave Sampson, who's the key contact for us there, I think the contacts with him go back well over a year. So it's been quite some time, but we'll get you the firm date and it maybe Chief Exec might have it.
Yeah, we're happy to add a bit in writing, but yes, Dave was part of that original working group, as were all the partners in South East of England. We had spoken to them and I understood we were continuing to speak to them. We'll get a list of all the stakeholders who we were in discussion with. The reason it effectively paused was we'd gone straight into the assumption that could you find a commercial operator? And no commercial operators came forward. So the reason for doing the consultation is to see if you can assess the demand, get the demand assessed first, and then reach back out to the commercial operators when you've got a little bit more intelligence around what you're asking for. But happy to give you some more details on that in due course.
Patrick.
Oh, yeah, just to follow up, Dave Sampson is in fact quoted on Wales Online saying that the consultation is going to be about batteries in combination with hydrogen, methanol, biofuel or synthetic diesel. I mean, is it still the intention to go ahead with a hydrogen ferry?
Ideally, that would be perfect because, again, we are looking to run a hydrogen bus trial. We're looking to see the creation of hydrogen fueling stations. And again, if you link that into the work that potentially will go on as part of the decisions on floating offshore wind, the upgrades to the ports in Neath Talbot and the potential complementary benefits for Swansea Port, plus the onset then of the Swansea project tidal lagoon, you would potentially be able to include not only the ferry infrastructure in that, but the hydrogen infrastructure. Now, the challenge with hydrogen at the moment is there isn't enough demand to create the network, and so you're in a bit of a chicken and egg position, but we want to be first movers. We know that Morabeni, I think, have got the contract for hydrogen production in Bridgend, and again, it's hopeful that that production will then supply the hydrogen bus trial down here, and potentially could be part then of a hydrogen refueling solution for a ferry going between those ports. If that isn't possible, then obviously other fuel sources will be looked at, and again, as Chief Exec said, when we get the test back in terms of what the operators would want, we'll have a better idea of where we start. I think the hydrogen fuel option is the aim eventually, but we're probably away from that at this point in time.
Thank you. The next question is from Councillor Peter May.
Councillor Rice will take that one.
Okay, thank you. It's a question for the Cabinet member. I think I probably need to borrow my friend's scarf for this because I'm going to do a bit of time travelling in my question. So if we go back to 2023, there was a projection there by the 25-26 year, we would have spent £86,700,000. In this year's actual calculation over that period, and the forecast of what will happen in 25-26, that total of £86.7 million has gone down to £18 million, which is about a quarter of what we were due to spend in Band B schools. Can the Cabinet member tell me why there's such a shortfall of £68,640,000 worth of expenditure on schools in that period of time? And can you explain how in 23-24 we only spent less than £1 million on Band B schools? And if you look at even for next year, we were proposing in 24-25, if we go back to 2023, we were supposed to be spending 35.8 million, and actually we're now projected to spend 2.7.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I was wondering what Councillor Rice would ask as a supplementary, because I think he's been building up to this throughout the budget discussion, to be fair. Yes, and I think if we go look at the figures on page 135, 136, If you look at the bottom line there, you will see fluctuations from year to year. That reflects the process that we go through in terms of building schools. It's not, as he knows well from his time in the cabinet, it is not a simple process. There are hoops to go through. There are processes to go through involving ourselves, involving Welsh Government, and so on and so forth. What we have is an ambitious programme that we are committed to delivering. And if we look at the investment that's in the list in front of you, we are talking in pre-construction phase of work at Bryn Tower, Gowerton Comprehensive, Cree Glass, Bishop Vaughan, the special school, the Bishop Vaughan, which represents significant investment in our school estate. There is investment in primary, in secondary, in special education, in Welsh medium, in English medium, and I am proud of the proposals that we have in this programme, Chair.
But why has it slipped so much? And why do the children who would have benefited it from 3 years ago not benefiting from it now? Because everything seems to be jammed tomorrow in this programme.
No, there is, as the page 135 and 136, that shows a record of 6 schemes that have been delivered. But as I said, it is not a consistent delivery over the years. Things do fluctuate. There are obstacles. What I will give a commitment to is that if there are capacity issues and finance allow us to bring forward this programme, then we will do so. It's something I'm committed to. Yes, I want to see this programme delivered a lot faster than it is being delivered. But that depends on a lot of factors, including things that are beyond our control as a council. We all want to see things delivered tomorrow, and I'm sure that goes for all projects across the whole council, Chair.
Final question is, do you believe that we've been concentrating on other schemes more than we've been concentrating on school capital programme? Because it appears that we've had no problem in delivering other projects within that time period.
No, Chair, I don't, and I pay tribute to the commitment of our officers in delivering the programme.
Okay, we move on to question 5 then. Again, that's from Councillor Maite or Cheryl. Councillor Philpott, no supplementary. Question 6 from Councillor Leslie Walton.
Yeah, just to ask the leader, I've noticed that there are quite a few good videos on social media on various things that are happening in Swansea, which is an excellent way for getting people in the city to know what's going on. Will there be more of that kind of thing?
In the interest of probity, yes.
Thank you. Next question is from Councillor Lyndon Jones.
Yeah, no supplementary.
Councillor Peter Black, question 8.
Supplementary.
Thank you. Question 9, Councillor Bev Hopkins or Councillor Erica Kirshner.
No supplementaries.
Thank you. Question 10 is Councillor Mike Lewis.
No supplementaries, Chair.
End of the questions then. We move on now to the notice of motion. And this is from Councillor Rob Stewart. Are you speaking first, Rob, or is it Louise? Louise.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to move this notice of motion today to mark International Women's Day 2025, which takes place on Saturday. And I appreciate it's late. I'm very grateful for all members for staying and giving their attention to this important issue. International Women's Day is marked annually worldwide on March the 8th and is seen as an opportunity to applaud women's achievements and honour female trailblazers, often in male-dominated fields. And whilst this celebratory aspect is important and to be welcomed, the radical roots of International Women's Day should not be forgotten. The first Women's Days were in the United States in 1908 and 1909, initiated by the Socialist Party of America, campaigning for labour and political rights of women. This crossed the pond and European socialist women's organisations followed suit in 1911. In 1914, Russian women met to campaign for peace, and further women across Europe held rallies to campaign against the war and to express women's solidarity, including a march in London in support of women's suffrage on March the 8th, 1914, when Sylvia Pankhurst was arrested in front of Charing Cross Station on her way to speak in Trafalgar Square. It was arguably the actions of women striking for bread and peace in 1917, which was a catalyst to the abdication of Tsar Nicholas II and the Russian Revolution. I'd like to be able to say clearly we've come a long way since then, but in many ways globally we haven't. Women and girls are disproportionately affected by the many crises affecting the world today, by armed conflicts, pandemics, climate change and economic crises. At the current rate of progress, it will take another 131 years to achieve gender equality worldwide. According to International Development Organization Focus 2030, only 10% of the world's heads of state are women today. Today, women enjoy less than 2/3 of the legal rights available to men. The gender pay gap is at 20% worldwide. 800 women die every day worldwide from complications related to pregnancy and childbirth. 40% of women live in countries where abortion laws are restrictive, and even after the right to abortion has been legalized, it can still be jeopardized, as we've seen in the United States with the reversal of Roe versus Wade, leading to the banning of abortion in 14 states. 270 million worldwide have no access to modern contraception. And to turn our attention to the focus of this motion, which is gender-based violence, more than 12,000 girls are at risk of female genital mutilation every day. 1 in 3 women globally have already suffered physical or sexual intimate partner violence, non-partner sexual violence, or both. Every 11 minutes, a woman or girl is killed by a member of her own family. The UK is not immune to this epidemic of violence against women, hence the National Women's Aid campaign calling on councils to take specific actions, and which prompted this motion. It's in all our communities, every ward, amongst every age group, every income bracket, every race, every religion, every sexuality, every disability. It's on our streets, in our schools, in our workplaces. It takes many forms: physical violence, coercion and control, emotional, psychological abuse, harassment online, image-based abuse, so-called honor-based abuse, and harmful practices. Some figures from a national audit report published on the 31st of January this year: more than 1 in 4 women will be a victim of sexual assault or attempted assault in their lifetimes. 20% of all police recorded crime was related to violence against women and girls in 22-23. At least 1 in 12 women are victims of violence against women and girls related offences every year. 97% of perpetrators of sexual offences were male in the year ending December 23, with a high proportion known to the victim. 86% of victims of sexual offences were female. 158 days is the mean number of days from the police referring a rape case to the Crown Prosecution Service to them authorising a charge in April to June 2024, and this is compared to a mean average of only 46 days for all crime. And the economic and social cost of domestic abuse in 2024-25 prices is equivalent to £84 billion. And that's to say nothing of the deep and lasting emotional cost of abuse on survivors and their families, especially their children. With this year's International Women's Day theme being accelerating action, it's a good time to remind us of what the actions we already take to combat violence against women, domestic abuse and sexual violence, and how we are committed to continuing this. I will hand over to Councillor Anthony to second the motion, and she will talk more about this. I'm proud of our record, but we must never be complacent. Violence against women and girls does not exist in a bubble. It's there because gender inequality is there, and we can't tackle one without tackling the other.
Okay, thank you. And thanks, Councillor Gibbard, for that and all the work that you've put into this. It gives me great pleasure as a responsible cabinet member to second this motion. I'm sorry, I'm very hoarse. The 2015 VODA SV Act, the focus is on prevention, and the emphasis of interagency cooperation creates a robust framework for addressing these deeply entrenched issues. However, it requires ongoing efforts from all political levels, national, local and grassroots, are essential to ensure that these policies continue to evolve and respond to the needs of all affected individuals. As a survivor of domestic violence and absolutely of PTSD, I welcome this motion today. We need to understand the profound impact that violence against women, domestic abuse and sexual violence has on individuals and our communities. Violence against women is a serious public health issue and a violation of human rights. Its effects are far-reaching, impacting the well-being of survivors, their families and the communities. The trauma experienced by survivors can lead to long-term health, economic and emotional consequences, all of which affect the fabric of society. Local politics can... Local politics can... It's cutting out to me, sorry. Local politics can be a powerful tool in addressing voter SV. Unlike national policies, we as local politicians often have a closer relationship with our communities and a more intimate understanding of local needs. We're in a unique position to drive change, advocate for survivors, and ensure the support systems are in place. There are several ways that, as local politicians, we can support the voter SV agenda. We have the ability to introduce or influence policies. We can make direct impact on the lives of survivors. We can advocate for the implementation of local laws that prioritise the protection of victims and hold perpetrators accountable. We can push for stronger penalties for domestic violence, sexual violence and other forms of gender-based violence. I have to say, if you ever... I've sat in our domestic violence court here in Swansea, which we have just been praised for nationally by a research that has just taken place for our setup and our protection of survivors and victims. But the reality of it is the sentencing is absolutely shocking. These men are having weeks. Do you know what I mean? It is to get a woman to come forward when they've had this horrendous experience to then be faced with somebody laughing in the face, basically. Do you know what I mean? Because they're certainly not afraid of going to prison. You know, it's just a nothing to them. You know, you have to see it to believe it. One of the most immediate ways that local politics can support is the allocation of funding for services and resources. We can foster collaboration between key stakeholders, including police, health services, schools, NGOs, to create a comprehensive response to voter. Local politics is an avenue through which we can influence public attitudes and behaviours. As local leaders, we can, for example, use our platforms to raise awareness about voter SV, through public speeches, campaign, local events, anywhere that we can. And, a key aspect of this is, we can advocate for safer communities for our women, for children, including increased lighting, which I'm pleased to hear the leader talk about earlier, in public spaces, improved public transport safety and community patrols, the integration of the voter SV prevention into broader public health and social programmes from healthcare to youth services, support for programmes that teach young people about healthy relationships, communication and conflict resolution from an early age. And I'm really pleased to say that our community cohesion team, along with cultural services as well, have been working really closely with education on misogyny programmes, because it's really hard to tackle, and you have to tackle it young. You have to change. Our young people are exposed like we never were. They're exposed on social media to these awful, awful things, So, I can't praise the staff enough, and within Safer Swansea Partnership, we have voter SV as a key priority for us. We have our strategy from 23 to 26, which informs our overarching plan. I'm going to cut some of this out, sorry, because I know it's been a long night. I can say we have tremendous partnership working, and we want everyone in Swansea to be free from violence. I would like to focus a minute on female genital mutilation and honour-based abuse. We need better data collection to inform services and policy. The last census data on FGM in the UK dates back to 2011, and many cases go unreported. The gaps in the data make it difficult for organisations like BOSO to plan services and secure the funding needed for prevention and support programmes. Although the UK has strengthened its legal framework against FGM enforcement, remains a challenge. Only 3 convictions have been made under the Female Genital Mutilation Act 2003, demonstrating the difficulty in prosecuting cases. Men play a vital role in challenging and dismantling the harmful cultural norms that support FGM. By involving men in these important conversations, we can shift societal attitudes and ensure that the response responsibility for change is shared across communities. I welcome our partner Bowser's work in Uganda through the Welsh Government's Wales and Africa programme is also benefiting Wales through community engagement sessions in both Swansea and Cardiff. The project has raised awareness about FGM in local schools such as Pentra Harbour High School and with community groups as part of their wider work addressing violence against women and girls. We have set up our regional FGM forum group, which aims to coordinate our work and provide support. I strongly advocate for this motion today to help us push forward and secure buy-in from all our partners. As Louise mentioned earlier, you know, it's an eye-opening reminder today that FGM and honour-based abuse is not a distant issue. It's happening in the UK as well. No local authority in Wales is free from either, and while significant progress has been made, more needs to be done to protect women and girls at the risk. Survivors' voices, community engagement, we need everybody to be going for this. And if I can finish on a story from going many years ago, I was a sister on a ward in Llandoch Hospital, the poisons unit. Bowser had only just started in Cardiff, and they brought in a young girl. I can still see her face now. She's the most beautiful girl I think I've ever seen. She was a little tiny slip of a thing, and she had a bounty on her head because she had left the most abusive marriage I'd ever heard of. The violence was so extreme. Bowser said she was going to be dead at the next one, and her father and her brother and everybody had put a bounty on her head and her children for her leaving, and that has stuck with me for the rest of my life. I can still see it. I can still see her. We have to change things. We have to keep this in the public eye, and we have to work towards ending it.
Councillor Wendy Lewis.
I wholeheartedly support this motion. I'm so glad we've got a council who helps victims of domestic abuse. No woman should feel worthless. No woman should hear the words "you're ugly," "you're useless," "you're thick," and etc., etc. I lived those words because I was brought up in a domestic abuse household. It's not a very nice place to be. You shouldn't have to be. I saved my mother's life twice when I was 13 and again in my 30s. My mother wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for me, and she's 92, so she'd be long gone. I shouldn't have had to do that as a child. No child should see their mother or their parents, because it happens to men, to see that kind of abuse. And that lives with me every day of my life. I'll never forget it, but we have to stop this. I don't know how we're going to stop it. I stopped it for a while by saving my mother's life. But as I said earlier, that's not right. Children shouldn't see all these things. We should be having a perfect childhood. Every child should be having a perfect childhood. My two did. So why shouldn't? I mean, and also with domestic abuse, if you're a child brought up in that, you could become that abuser as well. Luckily, I went down the good road. So I'm not going to ask anybody to support the motion because I know you all will.
Councillor Kirshner.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's been a long evening and I know we're all tired, but I do welcome this motion and I think we all do. And it's right that this council keeps it coming up and dealing with it top level, because I think we're doing things UK-wise, we're doing things locally. But I think the thing we have to remember is we're all part of this. You know, we have decisions we can make. We, like Wendy said, she chose to go one way. We have choices. And I think everybody in this room needs to every now and again have that look at themselves and see where they're going or what's motivating them or what they're doing. Because every day we're hearing a catastrophe women being murdered, children being murdered. The world's gone berserk. We all know that. So we have, I think, all I'm going to say is we've got to do our utmost, our real utmost to be alert and to help stop this in whatever way we can. We've put it on the table with the police. Women have come to us and said, the perpetrator's out, I'm terrified, but I didn't know. So we've put it to the police. Please let the victims know. So there's lots of little things that we are doing, not on our own, with partnerships. And don't forget, men have written women out of history. That's why we've got to struggle all the time. And we will see a different world at some point, but we're right there. We've got to fight for equality and equity. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Bento.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I wholeheartedly support this motion for all the reasons that have been stated in this room this evening. But particularly, I recall last year when BAUZO, the women's charity, conducted a research alongside the University of South Wales and found that ethnic minority women in Wales were more likely to suffer from domestic violence than any other group of women. This is not to discount the experience of any woman, because every woman counts, every woman matters. But on the back of that research, I worked very closely with BAUZO, delivering training to local authorities across South Wales on raising particular awareness to the plight of women with no recourse to public funds, and how local authorities can support them better through various pieces of legislation. And so for all these reasons, I would like to support this motion and say that I think it is time for us to move from creating awareness, or move beyond creating awareness, to actually accelerating action.
Councillor Linton-Jones.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I'm going to say really well done to Alison, a really impassioned speech. I think everybody should support this motion. I think it's everybody's duty to look out. I know that people have contacted me, not actually from my ward, but other parts of Swansea, and I have told the individual councillors, but the staff here have been really excellent. And some of the cases really harrowing, but they've been really excellent. And it is a sad, it is sad when you read the note that we want to halve violence in the next 10 years. And really, it should be really to prevent it. And, you know, but you've got to start. I'm very happy to support the motion. It is important that we do.
Only to say thank you to Councillor Pugh and Councillor Gibbard for bringing it to the attention tonight, for raising awareness. Completely support this motion and agree that many more things absolutely need to be done, and females encouraged to speak out and say no and call it. But thank you very much for, I fully support it. Thank you.
Stuart.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think it's important that men also speak in this debate in terms of making sure, because as Councillor Anthony and Councillor Gibbard pointed out, men are primarily the perpetrators here, and we have to lead by example and call out our peers when they indulge in following people like the Tate brothers and this toxic masculinity that is growing ever present. Can I commend all of our colleagues for their contributions tonight, and specifically Councillor Lewis and her bravery in sharing her story, which I know she's carried for such a long time. I was listening to the radio earlier today, and one of the more troubling stories that came across there was Councillor Gibbard said, I think a woman dies every 11 minutes from violence. Today they were saying that it's even exceeded by the women who take their own lives as a result of the abuse they're suffering. And the story that was being told was by a mother who'd lost her daughter to a violent partner who had encouraged her time and time again to attempt suicide, and finally ended up encouraging her to take her own life. He has received a sentence, but one that's purely insufficient from what we can see. So it is something that we all need to tackle, and we need to make sure that the generation that is coming up now doesn't fall into that toxic masculinity and take a step backwards. We all need to move this forwards with action. So thank you, Chair.
Anybody else? Councillor Davis, Adam.
Very quickly, I just wanted to use this opportunity to sort of pay tribute to all of the women that have spoken very bravely on this. Also make acknowledgement that rights are not fixed and that eternal vigilance is the price that we have to pay to maintain what we have. And on that note, I'd like to just pay tribute to one of our local members of parliament, Tonia Antoniazzi. I must declare an interest in that. I work for her, and I am the only male who works in that office. I'm very, very lucky and fortunate to be in there, and the work that she's currently doing in highlighting the plight of women in Afghanistan, because she's called for a boycott of England cricket games with Afghanistan, because women have gone from being able to practice and play the sport that they love to not being able to look out the window. And that's the reality of women in Afghanistan, and she's taken this stance. Despite opposition from across the political spectrum, we think that's something that shouldn't be talked about. So I just want to applaud her bravery and the bravery of the women here who've spoken about issues that maybe that we'd rather not talk about because rights are not fixed. Thanks.
Anybody else? Louise, do you want to come back?
Just to thank everyone for their contributions and their support, and yeah, I'll leave it at that. What are you saying?
Move to the vote then, please, so I can have a show of hands in support of the motion. Anybody against? Any abstentions? That's unanimous. Thank you all. Okay, we move on to the next notice of motion, and I believe it's coming from Councillor Lyndon Jones. You need to propose it and second it.
Great. Presiding member, I welcome the advice that we got from the legal officer, and we therefore welcome that this motion on national insurance contributions is going to Cabinet. It's a very important issue. We believe these problems were made in Downing Street, and with you know, unfortunately, they will affect those on lower incomes, and therefore it is an important thing, and the Cabinet need to consider it and the cost of it, and we welcome that.
Can I have a seconder then, please? Okay, thank you. There's no big debate on that because it's going to be deferred back to Cabinet, okay? Oh, sorry. Mr. Smith, we need to contact you for the time scale of this, please.
Yes, thank you, presiding member. Given that you've decided you will refer it to Cabinet, it comes down to what's a reasonable timescale. The notice as worded did ask for it being the next available Cabinet, but given that we are not likely to know our direct national insurance compensation until June, it seems illogical for Cabinet to consider it before then. The earliest would be July, and frankly, that looks a little bit tight, with August being a fallow month. So the earliest you could consider is September. My officer advice on timing as the Section 151 officer would be that you ask that it come back to October Council. That may feel a little late, but I think you should be informed by what will be known in terms of direct compensation and the spillover impact on the economy. And that should be timed about the right sort of time for review of reserves, mid-year budget statement. So if you are content to work to that sort of timeline, my officer advice would be October. You could at a push go to September, but my strong advice is you task Cabinet to have considered it in time for it to come back to October's Council, presiding member. Thank you.
Okay, Lyndon, are you okay with that? Okay. Thank you all for your patience. It's been a long night and I think we're all tired. Thank you. Okay, safe journey home.